Hello and welcome to Ignite TV. On this episode, you're going to be hearing from my husband Steve about his salvation journey and how he came to know God.
Welcome to another episode of Ignite TV. Have you ever wondered what salvation means, or how do you get to know God, and what's the process that one goes through? Have you ever questioned in your heart, am I good enough for God? Will God actually love me, or have I done too much wrong for him to ever accept me? We've just got Steve here to talk about his story and just bring you into a little bit more of how God relates to us, doesn't he? And how the journey of salvation and the journey of faith can be different for different people.
So yeah, Lindley, my salvation experience, I believe, is a bit of a journey and a bit of a process, which happened over several years, I'd say. It's so funny how with salvation or coming to know God, we can always box it into this, you say a prayer and then you're saved, right? Magically saved, right?
Yeah.
But I often think that salvation is a process and it's a journey that people need to walk through and come to a place where they know that they know that they know that they know that they're saved, right? So my journey is interesting. So from the age of 3 or 4 years old, I always knew there was a God. I always knew that God was real. I come from a non-Christian family, so my family didn't go to church, wasn't brought up in church, had no experience around God or anything like that. But from a very young age of 3 or 4 years old, I had the question, what does God look like? Who is God? What does his face look like? I can remember sitting on my stairs at home asking my mum, do you know what God looks like? Do you know what his face looks like? Who is he? And having all these curious questions around who he was. And I remember all through my childhood teaching myself how to talk to God or how to pray. And it would be so simple, like there'd be a supermarket we would go to and I'd pray to God that there would be a free bread roll to grab. So just learning how to pray, learning how to talk to him from a very young age. I didn't even know what being saved was. I didn't even know that anything to do with the Gospels or church or God. I had no recollection of it. All I knew is that there was a God that's real.
Wow. So this instinct in you, there's something in you that just knew that there was some higher being, there was some God out there. No one really told you. It was already inside you, that thought.
That thought was planted in me, I believe, from a very young age that there is a God.
Yeah.
That there is something bigger than me helping us through life, journeying us through life, having, overseeing everything. So from a very young age, I had a realization of God, but I had no knowledge of him. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And I think inbuilt in all of us, there is this deep sense or knowing that we are part of something that is bigger than ourselves.
That's right. Yeah.
That there's a power in the universe that is beyond us.
Yeah.
And then there's that journey of discovery, isn't it? Like, well, what is this power? Who is this God? So tell us a little bit about how you went on that journey and actually find the truth.
Yeah, so all through my childhood, knew that there was God, but I didn't know how to be a Christian or how to connect with God or what the ways or the formulas were to do that, right? Because I'm totally innocent to it. And then one day in Form 1 or 2, I can't remember, but it was Form 2, a friend of mine stood up, and we used to do 2-minute speeches in school. Remember?
Been
2
through
minutes.
those, yep.
You stand up and give a 2-minute speech. And he stood up and gave a 2-minute speech on God and on Jesus and what it was to be saved and how you needed to be saved. So in a Form 2 classroom, this bold young guy stands up and tells his entire class how you have to be, how you need to know Jesus and how you can be saved. And he was like, and I remember at the end of it, he gave an invitation. He said, if you want to know God, come and talk to me at morning tea, and I'll happily talk to you about it. So I just remember the words that he spoke just sat with my heart, and this belief that I always had that there is a God, and he had almost the key to the part that I've been missing. Like, I actually get to find out who he is, And so I met up with him at the interval, and we just sat down and started to discuss, is God real? Is he not real? And then he invited me along to a youth group. And in that youth group, there was an invitation to accept Jesus for the very first time. So say a sinner's prayer. You know how we say a sinner's prayer, like, dear Lord Jesus, come into our heart, forgive me my sins. That the prayer we always have said for years and years and years in church, right?
Yeah.
So we said that prayer, and then was shown scriptures and stuff like how you can be saved and how you know you're saved. And then then I was like, yeah, I'm saved, right?
Yeah.
But for me, I still had a lot of life to live because I'm only 12, 13 years old. I live in a non-Christian home. I don't know how to literally be a Christian because I've had no experience. And that's the part that I'd love to share with people today. Is one of the parts is that if you've got no experience of Christianity, sometimes it's a journey of trying to work this out. Like, what is this about? And what am I supposed to do now? How am I supposed to act now? How am I supposed to... So there's all these things that were going through my head at a young age, like, what am I supposed to be like now? But I still had a lot of life to live and a bit of a journey to walk.
So what I'm loving about this story of your life is that at an early age you had this instinct, this knowing that there was a God. And you were spiritually seeking, whether you realized it or not, I guess. And we're all spiritually seeking, aren't we?
Yeah.
We're spiritually seeking for truth, for what is this life all about? And then at the age of 12 or 11 or 12, you had another installment that led you, it was like the next stepping stone, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Like the next stepping stone to salvation was this young guy in your class, telling you about how to meet God and who he is.
Yeah.
I just think that's profound because, when we're on a journey, I just believe that when we're seeking something, it will come to us.
Yeah, it's so true. During my teenage years, I, what I would say is lived a pretty normal teenage life, but still got led astray a little bit here and there with, drugs and alcohol. And as you grow up, you've got challenges to face with peer pressure and do I follow God? Do I not follow God? So if I'm completely honest with you, through my teenage years, I went off the rails a little bit with, drinking and doing drugs and, that sort of stuff. But that whole journey, I can honestly say, even though I was walking in what we would call sin or bad situations, I honestly believe God walked by my side the whole time. Like, I remember being at a party when I was about 17, 18 years old, and I didn't know what this was at the time, but the Holy Spirit was talking to me while I was drinking and drunk, and he was telling me things about other people, so like prophetic words of knowledge. He was telling me about things about other people, and people were lining up, and I was telling them about what their goals and dreams and aspirations were going to be. And I was telling them, and they didn't know how I knew it, but I didn't know how I knew it either. So it was like a prophetic gifting that was there, and God was using it anyway, even though I was living this, loose life. So I firmly believe that if you're away from what we would say away from God, God never leaves you or forsakes you.
Yeah. Love that.
And even if you feel like you once were saved, but you feel like you've gone way out this way, God is still with you. God still walks with you because you're one of his kids. And once you become his child, once you become a child of God, he will fiercely pursue you until you get to a point where you realize he's good, you know. And I went through this journey of being what I would call in rebellion, and I was walking out my life how I wanted to walk it out, but knowing that God was calling me. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And, you know, what I love about that is the truth of once saved, always saved.
Yeah.
Once you've actually encountered God in that way and you know the truth, you might go off on your own path.
Yeah.
And make some decisions that are unhelpful for your life or detrimental to your life. But the truth is, once you're a child of God, you are always a child of God.
Yeah.
And God pursues you.
So true.
And protects, right?
He does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what was the turning point then? Because you're sitting on this couch now, and I know you as the man you are today, and you know, you and Anna are just incredible people with a really powerful ministry and faith. So what was the turning point that you know, can you imagine the road went off this way? When did it start to course correct?
Yeah,
know?
So that's real good description. The road going that way, curving, and then coming back into what we'd say alignment is, I had many situations where I was living not how God wanted me to live. Like, I'll give you a story. One night I came home and I've been drinking quite a bit, and I had the keys to get into my front door of my house, and I was feeling a bit, happy. So I remember throwing my keys up, just playing a little game with them, catching them in my drunken state. And I went to catch them and I dropped them, and I went to pick them up and I stumbled and kicked them. And as I kicked them, they went sliding and went down a drain. And I'm like, oh man, like my keys are lost. What am I going to do? And in my drunken state, I'm like, okay, I know what to do. I'll just pull the drain up and climb down there and find them. And I remember pulling the drain up and then jumping down head first into the drain and trying to find my keys in the drain, right? With like sewage water and all this nasty stuff.
Oh, man.
And I remember slipping down the drain and my head going into the water, and I was literally drowning in drain water.
Steve,
yeah,
must have been a low point.
Lowest point I could ever go, I think, because like, picture it, like drain, smelly sewage water, drunk, and I'm trying to find my keys, and then I'm slipping and I'm drowning, I'm drinking drain water. It's disgusting.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, I saw white light, and then I'm on the pavement.
You saw a white light?
Yep.
And then next thing you knew, you were on the pavement.
Correct.
What do you think that light was?
I personally think it was an angel.
Yep.
And at the time, if you told me about angels, I'd probably think, you'd think of a little guy in a little harp sitting on a cloud. But when I look back at it, that definitely was an angel. I would say, yep, 100% he rescued me. If I don't think an angel interfered that night, then I wouldn't be sitting here now. I was about to drown.
Wow.
And about 4 inches of water, drain water.
So you're really saying is that there is another realm that breaks into this realm on occasion.
100%.
Yeah.
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 Like God, if you know God, you're his kid, and I have kids myself. How much do I want to protect my own children? How much do you want to protect your children?
Fiercely.
Yeah. And that's the part of the heart of the Father that I think I know, is that if you are living in sin, or not the perfect picture for your life, He cares for you so much that He wants to help you and rescue you. And that night, He rescued me.
Wow, that is just such a phenomenal story, and a real evidence of angelic beings that are assigned to our lives to protect us.
Yeah.
Has there been any other sort of moments where you've experienced a being from a spiritual realm?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, tell me about
So
that.
one night I was lying in bed, and this is when I didn't know what angelic activity or any of the spiritual stuff was. So I put it down to this experience being a ghost.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
So I'm lying in bed, and I'm lying there, and I'm half asleep awake, and something wakes me up and says, go and check on your car. Right? And I'm like, oh, I looked at the alarm clock. It's like 3:30 in the morning. I'm like, I'm not getting up at 3:30 in the morning to go check my car. Go back to... And I sort of like had this conversation with this voice or ghost or whatever it was. Yeah. And then I went back to sleep. And then I remember waking up in the morning, and I was living at home at the time, and my mum calls up to me. She goes, Steve, did you sell the wheels off of your car? I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, the wheels on your car are gone.
Oh, no.
And I'm like, that's odd. So I went downstairs to see where my car was parked, and someone had stolen my wheels off my car during the night and left it on blocks. So I believe that was, God's voice or an angel or something just talking to me and saying, go check on your car. Not knowing what that was at the time.
But in hindsight,
I should have gone and checked on the car.
You should have gone and checked on the car.
Yeah. But I guess because I was innocent to knowing what God's voice was, it was a learning curve for me at the time.
Yeah.
And live and learn.
Yeah, you live and learn. And how much, those angelic beings interact with our world really is, I think, a lot more than we acknowledge or recognize.
Yeah.
But once we've had those kind of encounters, which can sort of feel a bit weird at times, can't it?
Yeah.
You might see something or you might hear something. The moral of the story being, pay attention.
Yeah. Yeah.
Otherwise you might get the wheels whipped off your car.
Yeah. So true.
Yeah. And so for the people that might be listening that have had voices speaking to them, or they might have had an angelic encounter or an encounter with a ghost of some kind or an apparition, how do you tell the difference between whether it's something that's positive or whether it's a negative force?
Is it surrounded in light? That's one experience that I've had, because when I was rescued, what I believe by an angel, all I saw was light. And also knowing the voice that's speaking to you. So if it's calm and collective and peaceful, it's normally God chatting to you. If it's yelling and screaming at you, then that's not. That's from there. That's what I would say.
Your journey unto salvation, like it was over many years that, from the first time that you recognised who God was, and to coming into the truth and having faith, like, being a man of faith.
Yeah.
Took years.
Oh, it's a massive journey.
And so what I love about that is that we're all included on this journey.
Yeah.
No one misses out. It doesn't matter where you are on the journey of seeking truth.
Yeah.
Everything is valid.
So after, when I got to that stage of about 21, 23, and these things were happening, I'm like, I need to get myself sorted, and I need to align myself with actually a church and and get myself planted in this, And I literally had no clue how to do it. No clue how to be a Christian, like zero idea. Like I've just got a thought of a friend and I on his 21st birthday. He's like, let's go out into town and let's go party. And we're both Christians at the time, and we're both trying to get our lives right with God. But because we're from a non-Christian background, we've got no idea of how to do this. So we still think, going out and partying till 4 or 5 in the morning still cool. It's cool to party, but we were doing it excessively each week.
So really it's about a journey of changing from the inside out, really. Yeah. It's not just overnight, bang, you suddenly are some sort of saint-like man.
Yep.
That there is a journey of being transformed into, someone who is of great character and, faith and morals, that there's a journey there to take, and that there's no expectation to just be, it's not a black and white switch. It's not a flick one day, you're now some sort of something else, which I think is really important to point out, because condemnation is so awful when you're feeling stink about who, maybe your behaviour or whatever. And, I've known people that have said, I'm too bad for God, or I've lived such a sinful life, he would never have me.
Yeah.
What would you say to someone who's maybe watching and thinking it's all right for you, but I've done such bad stuff that God would never have me?
It's one of my favourite conversations I love having with people. Because the fact is that he won't have you is a complete lie.
Right.
Because he will have anyone. It's unconditional love. So we often base our own expectation of God on what our own earthly fathers were like, or what our own experience with people in authority in our lives have been like. And if we've had struggles in the past with abuse or being heavy-handed, we paint God as that picture.
Yeah.
But God is not painted that way. God is painted in pure love. So the way I love to look at God's heart, and if you've ever had a kid or a child, you understand this, is that first moment you hold your firstborn kid and you look at it and you just think, I'm going to do whatever it takes for this child to be raised well and raised right, and just, you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, totally.
And that reflection is how I often look at God, how he loves us as individual children, and we need to understand that we are a child and that he is our father, and he wants to have a relationship with every single person on this planet, unconditionally. Yeah.
Yeah, no conditions.
No conditions.
Come as you are.
Come 100% as you are. And even if you come and you're still struggling with things, keep coming.
That's right.
Don't give up, because we're the ones that give up first. Because God will not give up before we give up.
Yeah.
Yeah. So many times I've given up on things and God's like, well, I never gave up on you.
Powerful. Yeah.
And so we put this expectation around that just because we keep stuffing up, just because we keep making mistakes, that God's going to get sick and tired of us making mistakes. He's just going to get totally over us. Like, I'm so over you, Steve, making dumb decisions. I'm just going to leave you to it. I actually don't think that's God's heart. God's heart is to, yes, give us free will and make choices. Yes, allow us to make decisions. But also know when we do make a wrong turn or a wrong decision, that he's still right there with us. He's still there by your side, holding your hand.
Yeah.
So
it's like, if we're ever feeling like we're not good enough for God, we run to God, not away from him.
100% such a good way. It's so simple, right?
Yeah, it's so
simple because we
Yeah.
put these expectations on ourselves. I call them, we put rules around ourselves for how we qualify ourselves to fit in God's hand.
Yeah.
When really the only qualification that we need is just to love Him
And
and
say
accept
yes.
Him.
Yeah.
Love and acceptance. And there's no other parameters for that. Because, you know, once I know that I'm accepted by God, once I know that He loves me no matter what and that He's good, it stops me from wanting to do wrong things.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Steve, for sharing all that today and that journey that you've been on, the journey of salvation, the journey of getting to know God. If you're watching today and you're on that journey and you've sort of felt that tussle, am I good enough for God? Is He going to reject me because of what I've done? You know, the truth is, He's never going to reject you. You can't, no matter how bad you've been in your own eyes, God's love is pursuing you 100% of the time. And it's just a matter of turning and saying yes. So what would you say just to anyone watching today about their journey, where they're at in their journey?
If you've been questioning whether God loves you or whether you even think that God is real, I just want to say right now, He is 100% real. He 100% loves you. And if you're feeling a burden of, I'm not good enough for God, I don't have what it takes to be a Christian, I feel bad inside, I have no peace, then today I want you to lay that down and just say a prayer with me. Lord, we just lay down our burdens and we just give them all to you, and we understand that you love us unconditionally and that you want to have a relationship with us and begin this journey of salvation. If you've said that prayer for the first time today, I pray that that opens up God's heart to you and that you begin to see Him move in your life miraculously and supernaturally.
And supernaturally.
Supernaturally.
Watch out for those supernatural moments where maybe angels come, or, you know, there's some experience that God's getting your attention.
We live with a supernatural God, you know.
Yeah. Thanks very much, Steve.
You're welcome.
Ignite TV is a non-profit and is funded by its viewers. If you've been blessed today by what you have viewed, we invite you to give via PushPay or bank transfer. We appreciate your generosity in helping make Ignite TV happen.